Hey, what's up, Liron here. Thank you for joining me in today's video. And if you want to learn how to paint metal or a metallic feeling texture in watercolor, check it out. This is exactly what we're going to do here. So I have this nice kettle. It has this golden metallic feel to it. I'm going to show you a very short snippet of the sketching stage. It's quick anyway. It's about 50 seconds, I guess. And then we'll get straight into painting this. You're going to see how I basically get the proportions. It's at perspective, so it's a little skewed to the right, just based on how we're looking at it from, I guess, straight ahead, but at a bit of an angle. It's how I took the picture, basically. Now, we're going to look at some of the key factors in creating that believable sense of metal. And in this case, we do have quite a dark metal. So what you get sounds like a music genre, actually. What you'll get is a lot of darks and a few highlights that aren't as light as you think. So the main mistake people make, usually the cause for that mistake is not noticing things, but how this mistake applies practically is they end up painting the highlights very light and the darks very dark and not nuanced. There's a lot in the middle there, and I'm starting with that middle. So I'm starting with a warm wash to start establishing the very tippy top of the kettle. I think it's a good place to start when we're talking about watercolor in general. I'm not going to devote a lot of attention to the background here, almost at all. I'm just going to throw something at it later on, you'll see, but nothing like, the main thing here is the kettle and the feel it has. So you see I'm coming back with black dark paint and painting wet in wet. Now the way to achieve this effect is, once again, you'll have to get the right timing. That develops with intuition only. Once you have that intuition, you'll be able to do this. If you come back too early, the black is gonna completely blend in. One thing to understand is when the water and the paint on paper is quite wet, if you come back with very dark paint, it's gonna move, but it's not gonna move a lot. So the darker and stronger the paint, the less it's going to move, which is good for us if you want to paint in a more controlled way. Now, you saw me there pre-wetting this spot there in the center just to preserve a tiny bit of highlight. And as I move to the sides of the kettle, I'm moving away both from that yellow into a more grayed or muted colors, basically mixed with the neutral tint. And also darker. So I go darker and more neutral, more gray. Now I'm going to come back with some very dark paint to establish the bit of darkness we had there that kind of escaped from earlier. And this would be the right timing for it to last. You'll see this will not move. Earlier it was too early. As I mentioned, sometimes you go too early. Now, I love putting in very dark paint next to light or medium value and watching them kind of blend together. Again, that is the most unique, I think, property of watercolor. I like taking advantage of that. And then again, on the other end, I'm going to paint with a medium value right next to the dark. I find that I love the way these two washes mix together. And one thing you'll find is sometimes if you do that, that alone can carry the painting and make it look really cool. That alone is enough to give it the life it needs, and the rest can kind of support that. Now, again, coming back with some wetter paint and water, mostly water in the center, and then a bit of golden paint. I'm putting basically the light where I want to leave it lighter, like a highlight, and then I can paint around it. Now I'm running into a bit of a risky territory here where things start to, the paint starts to be a little dark and I'm at a high risk of losing the flow. So I need to work fast, and also I could just dilute the paint honestly and work a little lighter. Now what you see here is very thick paint in the brush, painted over a wet area. Now, not anymore, but earlier. That is one of the key things that I've talked to you about quite a bit recently on how to get that, not only timing, but also the consistency. Again, you have to feel it. Same goes here. It's going to be the same effect once I put this relatively strong paint right next to water and a watery wash, and it's going to touch them. I did do a wet and wet video in the past where I show as long as you move the brush, the paint is not going to spread too much. So if you move it, it's going to stay where it's at mostly. But again, some of it will depend on the wetness. You see, just me trying to explain this, it gets full of caveats and rules, and it's very fruitless to try and explain this in such a detailed manner. Honestly, it's not really that important. You get a feel for it. Now look at this brush mark. This brush mark is very important. I'm gonna show it to you once again, actually, in a few seconds, I think. Oh yeah, I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna go over it in a second, and I'm gonna show you because this is what will create the feeling that the bottom it has a light bouncing back on it from the shelf. I was asked about this recently. How can you convey a feeling where you see the reflected light from the surface on the object? The question was about apples sitting on a very bright surface, but you're going to see it here as well. Okay. Now the way I paint this, I don't know what you'd call the part that pours. I'm starting with the kind of center piece with a medium value. This is quite strong, actually. It should be even stronger. It's not a highlight. It's not a light color. And then I'm ramping it while it's still wet, right, with darks. This, again, the more connections you make like this, the more of a flow they will have and the more they'll flow together. It doesn't mean you have to connect everything. You know, I always say you can do whatever you want. You don't have to connect anything if you don't want to. You can paint very fragmented. You can paint however you want. Just know that a tool for not bringing too much attention to an area is painting connected. Okay, same goes here. The reason I'm doing this kind of wet and wet is because I want the handle to feel smooth. I don't want it to be full of sharp shapes and sharp edges because it's rounded. That's the feeling I get from it. So that's what I'm putting an emphasis on, if that makes sense. And now we're painting the shadow under the kettle. Another important thing that I kind of want to include in there. One thing that could be improved in this is the colors I use, and maybe bringing out a bit more of a temperature. And by the way, we're not done, right? But bringing out more of a temperature change. I think I could have made more, squeezed more out of that lemon by introducing maybe a bit more ultramarine here and there. But it's fine. Very nuanced ultramarine, not something too strong. I am, however, using it for the background here, which ironically should be warmer. But as I mentioned, the background here is not the important piece. The important piece is the metal and the kettle. So already we have that golden to dark feeling. Now, what's missing? If you look at my kettle, what's the one thing that is really different? I have to say, in my eyes, it was the color. The original kettle should be a little darker, but also warmer. Because right now I have this old tin kind of feel to it, but we need to increase the volume on the gold property a little more, make it a little more golden. So that's what I'm going to address with the next wash. And I'm going to show you, you can paint a thin wash. If you're using good paper, you can paint a thin wash over an existing dry wash, and you're going to be perfectly fine. Nothing wrong with that. Now, it's going to look super dark. So you got to brace yourself for a couple of seconds, but don't worry, it's going to be okay. Again, not a perfect painting here, but it is going to be okay. And because I already have some of these areas lighter, I'm just painting over them. Though I will lift a bit in a second, you'll see. Now mixing in a very, very dark paint, because I do recognize some nuances to the side there that I want to push a little more. And it's a good opportunity while I have wet paint on paper. Why not make the most out of it? This is what I often like doing. And now I'm lifting. I lifted a bit. There's going to be more lifting later on. Now I'm continuing to paint it. I'm going to navigate around these highlights, but I have to do it in a thoughtful manner. Now I'm not thinking about it as I'm doing it. I'm kind of executing the plan, so to speak. But it's a you know, I'm painting around the highlight, then bringing in water. That's how it's going to work, basically. Bringing in water to make it a smooth transition. All of this is about bringing in water. How much water? You know, how much water on the brush, on paper, etc. Instinct, intuition, very hard to describe. Now this is a very important brush mark, because that's what's going to make the feeling here. We are again zoomed in. You can rewind if you want to see it again. I showed it to you twice. This is what is going to make the bottom look like it's reflecting light on the kettle. It's almost a coarse shadow. I would say it's more of a reflection in this case, but look at how much life it gives it. That was the main purpose here. That was the main reason why I did that. And look at how beautifully it blends out to top to the bottom, because it's a very wet paint. You get this interesting veiny pattern. that I personally really like. Now it's time to increase the contrast a bit with some of the highlights. So you'll see me lifting a bit more, basically pushing the mid values to actually be mid values, pushing the darks to be dark like here, and bringing out more of the highlights. Because one characteristic of metallic surfaces is that contrast between the highlight and the mid to dark value. There's this strong contrast there. Almost like a leather jacket, you'll get a similar quality due to how reflective the surface is. Here we are, again, lifting with a bit of a tissue. Sometimes that will work. If you do it gently enough, you'll still get a smooth transition and smooth kind of feel to it, because it's a rounded surface. It doesn't need to be a sharp transition. Same goes here. I'm adding a bunch of water so that I can reawaken the paint and lift, whether it's with my tissue or with my brush. You see how it brings out that shiny feel to the kettle. Now I'm going to add a few lines to the background. This is just to give us a sense of solidness and perspective, but it has no real role other than that. And with that, we're going to sign this, and it's wrapped up. This is the process. This is how you paint a metallic surface. This is more of a golden, dark kind of metallic surface. Copper, gold, whatever, something like that. Lift it a bit, and here we are, the end result. If you want to learn how to paint with complete freedom, passion, courage, get the results you want, be sure to check out the frustration-free watercolor course. I'm going to put the link in the description box below. Other than that, I want to thank everyone who watches this video, and I want to thank everyone who supports me over on Patreon. You make it possible for me to do this, to provide tons of free content for everyone. If you want to get credits at the end of the videos and get access to a few exclusive processes and posts, be sure to check out my Patreon. In any case, with that, we'll wrap it up, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.